Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. We're reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, taking up where we left off just recently, in the memory of all, at the Adi Lila chapter 2. Now we're on text number 37. Pritve jaiche gata kuler karana ashrayo jivera nidhana tumi sarvashraya. As the earth is the original cause and shelter of all pots made of earth, so you are the ultimate cause and shelter of all living beings. Purport: as the vast earth is the source for the ingredients of all earthen pots, so the Supreme Soul is the source for the complete substance of all individual entities. The cause of all causes, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of the living entities. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7.10, where the Lord says, Bijam mam sarvabhutanam, I'm the seed of all living entities. And in the Upanishads, Kata 2.13, which says, Nityo nitanam chaitanas chaitananam, the Lord is the supreme leader among all the eternal living beings. The Lord is the reservoir of all cosmic manifestation, animate and inanimate. The advocates of Vishishtadvaita Vada philosophy explain the Vedanta Sutra by saying that although the living entity has two kinds of bodies, subtle, consisting of mind, intelligence, and false ego, and gross, consisting of the five basic elements, and although he thus lives in three bodily dimensions, gross, subtle, and spiritual, he is nevertheless a spiritual soul. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who emanates the material and spiritual worlds, is the Supreme Spirit. As an individual spirit soul is almost identical to his gross and subtle bodies, so the Supreme Lord is almost identical to the material and spiritual worlds. The material world, full of conditioned souls trying to lord it over matter, is a manifestation of the external energy of the Supreme Lord, and the spiritual world full of perfect servitors of the Lord is a manifestation of his internal potency, internal energy. Since all living entities are minute sparks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is the Supreme Soul in both the material and spiritual worlds. The Vaishnavas, following Lord Chaitanya, stress the doctrine of Achintya Bheda Tattva, which states that the Supreme Lord, being the cause and effect of everything, is inconceivably simultaneously one with his manifestations of energy and different from them. So let's just for a second. First of all, it's such a important aspect of understanding the process of Krishna consciousness to know the different energies of the Lord. There's a distinction between the personalist and the impersonalist philosophies, and that impersonalists say that the Lord has no energies, that there's a homogeneous oneness when we describe the absolute truth, and all variety therein is illusion. However, the Bhagavatam describes Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdite. Although the Lord is one, he exhibits himself in various manifestations, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Furthermore, the Vishnu Purana says, Vishnu Shakti Paraprokta Kshetragyakya Tatapara Avidya Karma Sangyanya Tritya Shakti Rishite. That supreme absolute truth is known by three distinct categories of energy. One is the internal potency. The next is the external potency, and the third is the tatastha, or the living entity, who's in between the two, and who exhibits material association through fruit of activity and through fruit of work. And of course, in the Gita, Krishna goes to the trouble to articulate the difference between the lower and the higher energies. The lower energies are earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. Bhumir, apo, analo, vayu, kamano, buddhirevacha, ahankara, ityame, bina, prakritirashtana. Then he says, above these is a higher energy. Aparayam itastanyam prakritim vidime param, jiva bhutam mahabaho, yayedam daryate jagat. The higher energy is the living entity who is struggling hard with the material nature, and thus it appears to be animated. So unless somebody knows the distinctions of energies, then he or she will be unable to extricate him or herself from the entanglement of the material world. In fact, in just talking to audiences recently who are unacquainted with Bhagavad Gita and trying to give introductory information, when we talk about the different energies, sometimes people are not, well, I would say they're fully unaware of the fact that there's a distinction between the energies. They don't know about another world that Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita as being permanent. As he says, 8th chapter, parastasmatu bhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatana. In this world, things are being manifested and unmanifested all the time. And material nature is eternal, but it's sometimes manifest and sometimes not manifest. It's always changing. But Krishna says, besides this, there's another world that is permanent. And even when everything in this material world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. And if I don't know about that, then where will I take shelter? Where will I put my attention? Somebody the other day suggested that, well, what about nature? We can take shelter of nature. And as we were talking about it, this person was indicating that in nature, actually, we'll find peace. And I asked, have you ever watched the Nature Channel? And she said, yes. And I said, have you noticed there's absolute carnage even within nature? You watch the Nature Channel and you'll see it's a lot of death and destruction going on there. One living being, jivo jivasya jivanam, hastani sahastani, aparani chatushparam, palguni tatra mahatam, jivo jivasya jivanam. Shaunaka Rishi says, material world's a dog eat dog. Those who have superior power through more legs or hands, they eat the other ones. It's like, oh, okay, you're my food. So this material nature Krishna describes as a place of struggle. Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manakshashtanindrani prakriti stani karshati. Everyone's struggling hard with this nature, and unless one knows about a superior energy, there's no reason to aspire for it, and there's nowhere to place one's attention. So I also want to point out that in the 15th chapter of the Gita, Krishna makes this distinction as well. He says, Dvavimau purusho loke, shara shakshara evacha, shara sarvani bhutani, kutasta shara uchate. That there are two categories of living entities. He said the fallible and the others are called infallible. And the fallible ones are the ones who are mixed up with the material nature. And those who are called infallible, they're associated fully with the spiritual nature. This means that they're taking shelter of that nature. Mahatmanas tu mamparta daivim prakritim ashrita bhajantya nanya manaso gyatva bhutatim avyayam. Krishna says in 9th chapter of Gita that Daivam Prakritim Ashrita, they take shelter underneath that divine nature of mine. So it's a vital aspect of understanding spiritual practice, that there is a difference between material and spiritual worlds. And then there's the subtle distinction that it's simultaneously one and different. The Chinta Beda Tattva. It's a Beda, it's different, and Abheda, it's the same at the same time. And Krishna gives some indication of this in the 9th chapter of the Gita. The most frequently quoted verse by Srila Prabhupada about this is Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavyaktamurtinam atstani sarvabhutani nacha hamteshu vastita. Krishna describes how I'm there in my unmanifested form, but at the same time he mentions that I maintain my separate existence all the time. So this is a fundamental and very important understanding that one should start with to understand the process of devotional service. For, as Prabhupada says elsewhere, for there to be devotional service, there has to be 3 things, and that is the worshiper, the worshipped, and the mood of worship. And these are not possible if everything's one. But if there's a difference, then that devotion is possible. But if there's a difference, then how can you say you're talking about God? Because there's no differentiation within God. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the perfect philosophy based on Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, in which we can understand that there's simultaneous oneness and difference. And within that, there's the opportunity for the exchange of love between Krishna and the living entity, which is the main purpose of the creation. And minus that, the living entity becomes entangled in the lower energies. So practically speaking, for us, the way to come out of the entanglement in the material nature, the hard struggle for existence and repeated birth and death, is by taking shelter of the internal potency through the process of devotional service, especially through the 9 processes. Iti pumsarti pita Vishnu bhaktischenna valakshana kriyeta bhagavatyada tanmanye ditam uttamam. Prahlad Maharaj says, these direct processes of devotional service that one deliberately enters into are the sum and substance of all teachings of the Vedas that come to this point. The 9 processes start with Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. If you hear and chant, then you will remember Krishna. And it means that we're actually in contact with that internal energy and we're taking shelter of the process. Now let's have a few reflections or questions. If you go to the chat box here, or if you just look at your screen right now, you'll see that you can go to isvlibrary.com and you can write your questions and we will field them. And I have a link somewhere, I know I do, where I can look at them. Here, I got it. Today is the 4th. How there's so many things already. Oh, I see, it's from the Japa period. Okay. Okay, so a few points that are here already in the box. We have Shankaranand Prabhu, who said, eternally indebted to His Holiness Bhakti True Swami, by whose mercy I developed appreciation and liking to hear so many Vaishnava bhajans, which he sang as loving offering to the Vaishnava community. Sri Madhava Mahotsava said, I like when you quoted, chanting is simple, but one must practice seriously. Radha Venkat Prabhu said, if I am thirsty, opening the tap, saying the mantra with the mouth is not sufficient, but holding the cup under the tap and pouring in the mouth is even more important. Hearing the mantra is even more important. Rohit says, I remember the other day in a lecture you mentioned that if we chant good japa every day, everything in life will fall into place and everything will be good. But if we don't chant japa, we shouldn't complain that things aren't going well in life. Yeah, or as one songwriter said, I don't know what you expect staring into the TV set. What do you expect? If you stare into the TV set and then you complain about your life, what do you expect? Your living entity, take some initiative and chant Hare Krishna. Don't look at TV. Madhava Prema Prabhu says, I like when you read Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.14 verse Apana Samsritim Gauran. We can overcome fear by chanting the holy name. Anybody who likes Srimad Bhagavatam is a blessed soul. Divyanga Prabhu said, in the immortal words of Guru Kripa Namata, ain't nothing like Harinam. Achyuta Radhe says, chanting must go on preferably loudly or silently, if not possible to chant loudly. Good. Bhagavat Seva. Fact, the holy name and the Lord are non-different, and all acharyas are in agreement with this one point. It increases my faith and motivation to chant. Good. Bhagavat Seva, is it compulsory all 16 rounds are completed in one batch during morning Brahma Muhurta? What would be best breakdown for reading, chanting, devotional service? And then we have other services. It really depends on the pattern of your life. Get as many good rounds done as possible, early as possible, and then fill in the rest if you happen to have a busy period in your life. Prabhupada did it 4, 4, 4, and 4 when he was fully engaged in family life and business. Kauta Karnava said, when I chant more, it improves my concentration. I could see it when I chanted 33 rounds on Ekadashi. Yes, this is a good point, Kauta Karnava Prabhu, that try chanting more. Don't assume 16 rounds is, this is all I should chant. But if you take extra time and chant more rounds, try 32, try 64, try 108. Try 164 rounds one day and see how you feel. If you don't feel better, you come to me and talk, and I will give you a cash prize. When I chant more, it improves my concentration, he says. Yes. Next one is Sri Madhava Mahotsava. He appreciates the verse from Bhagavatam 10.1.4. Again, another appreciator of Bhagavatam. Nivrittatarsha, because in the translation it says, glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the Parampara system, that it is conveyed from spiritual master to disciple, and then it's the right medicine. I certainly feel this from you in these discourses. Thank you, Sri Madhava Mahotsava Prabhu. Dennis and Karina, Hare Krishna. I heard from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu that the jiva is in a seed form in the material body and can manifest his spiritual body again. But when I spoke with another devotee, he said this can't be because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that the jiva is unchangeable. So we must always be in our eternal form. I didn't know what to say or think about it. Maybe you can give some insight. What we find in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, that when Gopakumar and his disciple are in Vrindavan just before they meet Krishna, their present body gets transformed into a spiritual body right before their eyes. And so you can read that section. It gives a lot of insight into that process. Some devotees, like the Pandavas, are mentioned to have gone back to Godhead in their self-same bodies. So it's not absolutely stereotyped, but there are some indications there. Sri Madhava Mahotsava Prabhu says, in reference to finding some peace in nature, I really like your point. Watching National Geographic with my son reminds me that being born as an animal is suffering. I never want to take birth again. It reminds me when Srila Prabhupada says you can make a nature study. Yeah, it's carnage out there. Those living entities are fairly ruthless, except for a few pictures here and there of golden retrievers being very friendly to people. It's a very material world in general is a very dangerous place. My question is that one of the ways to get rid of the entanglements of the material energy is to control our anarthas. We know that we should manage our anger, krodha, and let go of it, as is one of the anarthas. However, it becomes quite difficult to control one's anger when the other person, especially an adult, is not following our advice. And we feel that we are trying to help this person to correct his or her behavior, despite knowing that the Supreme Lord is the controller in this situation. We are thinking to be in control. How do we manage this conflict and draw the fine line between getting angry on someone to correct their behavior versus controlling them to impose your choice upon them? Well, that doesn't seem like a very good set of choices there. Getting angry at people generally doesn't get you what you want, and trying to impose your will upon them doesn't either generally work very well. So there's controlling anger is important, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Shaknoti haivaya shodhum praksharira vimokshanat kama krodod vavam vegam suyukta sasukinara. That praksharira, before you give up this body, you should have shaknoti haiva, you should have the strength to be able to give up anger and lust. And if you can do that, then he says you're sukinara, you become a happy human. So we have to learn how to control anger by noticing, first of all, when we're dealing with other people, what really motivates them to change. And if we become angry at them, it generally doesn't help. And we try to impose our will upon them, it doesn't either. There's such a thing as nonviolent communication, which I subscribe to because it has to do with communicating in such a way that you don't inflame the situation. And I can give you more information about that later. Tadiya Seva Prabhu says, great loss for our Sankirtan movement from the loss of His Holiness Bhakti True Swami. By His mercy, I was able to watch Srila Prabhupada's videos. Yes, Prabhu, it's a great loss. Absolutely. Vaikuntha Nayak Prabhu, today in the purport there was a reference to Vishishadvaita philosophy. Could you give a brief comparison of how Mahaprabhu's Achintya Bheda Bhed philosophy with Madhvacharya's Dvaita philosophy and Vishishadvaita philosophy? What are the similarities and differences of Mahaprabhu's Achintya Bheda Bhed with the other two Vaishnava philosophies? It's very, very subtle differences. Very subtle differences. And to be perfectly honest with you, when I studied this more carefully, I read several books about it. It's so subtle that it's very difficult to explain. But I would just say that Mahaprabhu's philosophy has fine-tuned it. Some are more geared towards the difference, and some are closer to the sameness. Mahaprabhu perfectly synthesized by saying simultaneously one and different. But I can give you information to study where you can look for yourself for the subtleties. Bhaktin Shraddha says, how does understanding the different energies of Krishna help us develop our devotional attitude? Well, first of all, we should understand that Krishna is present in all his energies. One of the ways that Shukadeva Goswami tells Maharishi Parikshit in the Bhagavatam to understand Krishna is first through the material energy. He tells them in the second canto that you should see that the universal form is actually the form of Krishna. The mountains are the stacks of his bones, the trees are the hairs on the body, the universal form. One starts to see energy as connected to Krishna. And then he says you should notice how benevolent it is. The streams are giving water for free. There's a natural way in which you can lie on the ground and be comfortable if you just use your hands for a pillow. You don't need Tempur-Pedic. And there's an arrangement through these energies. And then if one distinguishes between the lower and higher energy, one can understand that through the connecting with the Krishna's internal energy through a service attitude, that one comes directly in contact with Krishna. For instance, although the material energy is known to be the inferior energy, if you engage it in Krishna's service, then you can transform that energy. For instance, we know that deities are made of stone, wood, and what else?
Metal,
yes, stone, wood, metal, etc. Paint, jewels. There are different ways we use stula, or the material energy, in order to shape a deity. And then there's a method of worshiping the deity. And if you understand the science of Krishna's energies, then you know we're not worshiping stone. We're not worshiping metal. We're not worshiping wood. We're actually worshiping Krishna, because he can, through his internal energy, he can appear within the inferior material energy in the form of the archa, or the deity, so we can worship him. So in that way, by understanding his different energies and how they work, that we can actually be in contact with him constantly, noticing his hand in nature. Not a blade of grass moves, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme. And we can also understand, if we can understand how his internal energy is working, that we can use material things like even sound vibration with the proper guidance by chanting mantra with the proper mood. We can become directly connected with Krishna through these energies. Priya Kishori, in the purport of CC, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that the soul is very similar to the subtle and material body. What does this mean? Isn't it so that the soul is completely transcendental and material mode of elements that form the body? Yes, but don't you think that you're your body, Priya Kishori?
Philosophically, we hear that we're not our body.
No, I'm asking you. Do you ever feel like you are your body?
Well, sometimes when you're in pain or you have an
Just
extreme
say
pain.
yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Devahuti, you're not alone. Devahuti says the same thing. When she's speaking to Kapila Dev, she says, although I know all these things about this philosophy, it really seems like I'm my body and my mind. What to speak of my mind? How will I ever get out of this? And the soul within the womb, we hear the plaintive cries from the soul within the womb, who's saying to Krishna, how am I ever going to get out of this? I've noticed that I'm in this cycle of birth and death now that I'm in the womb, and this is a liminal state. Somebody can look up the word liminal and report back to us. Don't put it on the screen, because then I'll miss you all. But liminal, it's a in-between state, kind of like when you're waking up from a dream and then you become a little more lucid. So in that state within the womb, the soul realizes that, oh my goodness, I'm taking another material body. And when you're leaving this world, you may have a clearer idea that I'm not my body. I told you many times, my mother, who never practiced devotional service except for the 3 months at the end of her life, she said to me 2 days before she left, she looked at me as a soul, not as my mother, and she said, I never want to have to do this again. And there's a way in which we're not our body, but we become so inexplicably connected with the body and the mind, it's very difficult to distinguish between the two. And even Devahuti says that to Kapila Dev, how will I ever come out of this? It seems like I've been in this eternally, and I always will be. How will I come out of this illusory state? Interestingly, Kapila Dev then says, you'll be able to do this by hearing for a long time and engaging in proper service. And again, he says later on that by the practice of bhakti, the subtle material body is dissolved just the way food is dissolved when it's put into the stomach. It's digested naturally by the acids in the stomach. And we just read the other day in the bhakti community that the soul, the person who's engaged in devotional service should be patient, because at the right time, the result of devotional service will come of its own, by its own force, so powerfully. So it's because actually on a technical level, the soul is very bright. We're luminous. The body's not luminous. In fact, you'll notice if you're ever with somebody when they leave their body, that the body no longer, the lights are not there anymore. I was with Sudama Prabhu when he left the world, and I saw that as soon as he was gone, I could tell the light was out. Same with my mother. I saw she was there, now she's not there. I could tell, you can understand that. The soul is the source of illumination within the body, Krishna says, in the 13th chapter of the Gita. That luminous nature of consciousness, it pervades the whole body, just like it's in my fingers right now. But I'm not my finger, but I can feel the pervasive nature of consciousness there, right? So this the energy of the soul is there within the body and is pervasive within the body. And so it also projects itself into the subtle body as well. So the buddhi is extremely subtle. It's even more subtle than the mind, the manas. So the way it's described in the Yoga Sutras is that the luminosity of the soul is reflected upon the buddhi. And then when we as souls look at the buddhi and see that it's luminous, we take it that that's us. And therefore we identify with the mind and the intelligence. And the mind and the intellect in contact with material nature take in impressions from the material world, and they actually take that shape. They become shaped in different ways because of the impressions that come from the outside world. And when I look at those shapes and impressions, I assume mistakenly that that's me. So I think I am afraid. I am a man, I'm a woman, I'm a cat, I'm a dog. And I'm simply identifying with that distortion of the mind and the intellect. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says spiritual life begins with Chaito Darpana Marjanam. You have to cleanse the mind by the process of Harinam. And when it's cleansed, then you can see yourself for what you are. And you can also see the difference between yourself and your mind, your intellect, and so forth. But it's the most common of mistakes in the material world. Everybody thinks I am my body, or I am my mind, I am my life situation, but it's not true. Asango hyayam purushaha, says the Vedas. He said, little jiva, you have nothing to do with this world at all, nothing. It's not your place. You're categorically different from all this, so don't think you're your body, says the Shastra and says Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And once you realize that, then you'll be sitting in a body and you'll think, oh, what do I do now? Because how did I get into this situation? Well, who knows? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says somehow or other you've fallen into this material nature. That's the explanation, somehow or other. So now how to get out of it? Don't thrash around. Don't panic. Don't make any sudden moves. Stay neutral. Don't try to get out of the body. Just go on with your devotional service and be patient, because you'll be extricated from the material world. Karmani nirdahati kintucha bhakti bhajan. Through the bhakti bhajan, then your karma will be nullified. This body is made of karma, of actions and reactions, and it's a formation of the three modes of material nature because of those actions and reactions. And that will all be dissolved by the process of bhakti. And that includes our identification with the mind, with the intellect, and the ego will be purified from thinking I am the body and everything in relationship to my body is mine. There's a story about a man, he used to sit on the bench every day outside the Gaudiya Math and read the newspaper. And he was reading every day about all these deaths in the world, no reaction. And then one day he read, and there was an obituary, and it was about his father, who he was estranged from, and it turned out his father had died. And then he broke down crying. And the devotees asked him what had happened. He said, my father died. And then they were reflecting later that every day he's reading the obituaries about people dying, but he never reacted. But then he saw my own father died, so he reacted. So everything in this world is of importance to us when we're connected through the sense of I am this body. And when one becomes purified of this, one thinks that Jivera Swarupoy Krishnera Nityadas. I'm an eternal servant of Krishna, and sees all the relationships with the material world as just superfluous. Shraddha, did you find liminal?
Yes, Maharaj.
You found it? Okay.
Liminal will come up as relating to a transitional or initial stage of a process, occupying a position at or on both sides of a boundary or threshold. It says it's an intermediate state.
It's a nice word, I think. My humble opinion. Where does it come from?
It comes from Latin and then English. It's a combination of the two.
And what are the elements of the word? You can look in the etymological dictionary. It's called Online Etymological Dictionary.
Online, yes. There we go. And this is liminal protein. It comes from Latin, limen, threshold, crosspiece, sill.
Yeah, and if you look at the word limit, it comes from limit. Old French, mark a boundary, Latin, limitare.
Al and limit. Limit being boundary, frontier, from Old French, limite. About Latin, limitim. Nominative times.
That's maybe
Yes?
when you. Oh, sorry.
Prabhu, go ahead. Yes, pray. Haribo.
When you were talking about the sense and the identification with the body, make me remember that verse that you quote often. Kamadinam katina katida palita durnidesha te samjata mahina kanunana trapano pasyanti utriyaita matayadupate sampratam labdabudi tvayamayata sharanam avyayam mamiyuyat madasya. So that made me remember that are the fallible soldiers.
Yes, and bad masters. This says these are our bad masters personified. So a child runs away from home, and then gets taken in by bad foster parents, and is abused. So we're like that. We leave Krishna's shelter, and then we take shelter of the material nature, and think that I'll get shelter here. But it's like going into a bad home where the parents, they're very bad. They abuse the child. So we're being abused here. So if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. And then, find out where your real home is and take shelter. And that's what he's saying in that verse. That no more. Utsri jaitanata yarupate. Samprata labda buddhis. I've gained my intelligence now to understand where I come from. So now I'm asking Krishna for shelter and service. Thanks for bringing that up, Prema. A really great verse. Thank you. Let's see. Prikishori, did you have a follow-up question, or are you satisfied?
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Actually, along the word of sublimation, in school when we learn chemistry, sometimes dry ice, without becoming water, it directly becomes air, like it directly vaporizes into air. And that, like the example that you used was very nice, because even in philosophy, they speak about how the body becomes re-spiritualized through this process of sublimation. So thank you for that wonderful explanation.
No, I didn't get it. So dry ice, so what is it?
Okay, so the word sublimation has been used to describe an exchange of bodies and spirits, similar to laboratory phase transition between solids and gases.
Solids and gases.
And so instead of the ice actually having to become into water and then sublimate to air, it makes that direct transformation. And throughout like Latin and Greek philosophy, that's been described to actually describe the spiritualization of the body.
I see.
Yeah.
So unpack it a little more. So on one side, let me just make sure I'm getting this right. On one side, you've got one experiment, you have ice. Ice has to turn to water, and then from water, it goes to vapor.
Yes.
And then that's compared to what?
And then whereas in some instances, ice can directly turn into air, especially in situations such as dry ice.
Yeah.
And here it's written, and subliminations we make for 3 causes. The first cause is to make the body spiritual. The second is that the spirit may be corporeal and become fixed with it and consubstantial. So this is like a small excerpt that they had mentioned, that the process of like sublimination is like compared to the body being re-spiritualized and then establishing the spirituality of the body. At least that's what is coming from, like that perception of how it was used.
Okay. So you're saying when we take to Krishna consciousness, then we go from the solid form into the spiritual form?
In the example that you used of the word sublimation,
Yeah.
that we are able to transform or re-realize our spiritual identity by the process of purification.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're always looking for these analogies because they're thought bridges and very important.
And
Okay, Prikishori, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, just to add that sublime itself means grandeur. So it's also establishing what Priya Kishore is saying, that from a lower position of material, you're rising to a higher level through sublimation. So that's why they say devotional service is a sublime process also, like that.
Okay. My word wasn't my word liminal?
Yeah, we started from liminal and then we ended on sublime.
Sublime, liminal.
Yeah.
And what does sublime mean?
Yeah, so I was saying that the word sublime is also used for grandeur. So I was just supplementing what Priya Kishore was saying about the process of, realizing your spiritual identity.
There's a lot in that word and in Priya Kishore's example.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to work on that a little more. I know that's going to be a real winner, but I need to, I think, get some dry ice or something. Okay. Hari Sankirtan Prabhu gives a reflection. In one of our discussions, I was mentioning that 16 rounds is minimum and we should chant more. The counter argument was that we don't want to do more offensive chanting. Your points clarify that. Chant as much as possible, even with offenses. Yes, it's in Shastra. Nama parada yuktanam namanyeva harantyagam avishrani prayuktani tanyevarta karanicha. There's somebody correct me, if the Padma Purana, I forget exactly which Purana, but you can look it up. Nama parada yuktanam. And there it says, if you're offensive in your chanting, the remedy is to chant without stoppage, and probably gives the same advice you'll find in 9.30 in the Bhagavad Gita 31, Shri Prambhavati Dharmatma Shashvashantim Nagachati. In the purport he says, if you've fallen down or you've made a mistake, then you should chant without stoppage. Of course, you should do that anyway, but that's the prescription. Thank you, Hari Sankirtan. Dhanavari says, it is a great loss for us. It's sad news. Talking about His Holiness Bhakti True Swami. Thank you for singing bhajan. We are constantly reminded about death. I like the point about japa, don't stop. Even if you are not chanting correctly. Yes. Not that
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Sorry, Guru.
Not at all.
I was just reflecting on that story that you were telling about the Gaudiya moth.
Yes.
And the man reading the newspaper in front, and just with such a day as Bhakti True Maharaj's disappearance, I was just thinking how the material world we lament because we lost something that has contributed to our false ego or our material identification. But in spiritual life, the things that we lament for is those who have contributed to our spiritual advancement, and how it's completely different from like a self-centered understanding of lamentation. It's completely categorically different. So I was just reflecting on that example that you gave.
Yes, and it's an important distinction because oftentimes through mental speculation, people think that spiritual life means the opposite of material life. And because we have relationships in the material world, therefore spiritual life means no relationship, means no emotion, And in the Gita, Krishna says, Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashrita bahavo jnana tapasa putamad bhavamagataha, which means that in order to advance in spiritual life, you have to overcome three things. First is raga, which means the irrational attachment to matter. It's like a little bird smashing his head into the window because he sees another bird there, or he sees the reflection of a fruit and he keeps banging his head harder and harder to try to get it. So you have to give that up, which seems like a good idea, doesn't it? Vitaraga bhaya means fear of a personal relationship with God. Because my relationships in the material world seem troublesome, even when they're very nice, then we have to give them up, and it hurts so much that I might then speculate that spiritual life means I'd have relief from any idea about a relationship, and I don't have one. So that's a mistake. We actually have a relationship, but it's with a perfect person, and he can reciprocate perfectly with us. So it's not fraught with the anomalies that material relationships are fraught with. And thirdly, he says, does Krishna, the krodha, anger that comes from the frustration of hearing various philosophies and not having proper guidance to understand any of them. And therefore, one becomes angry and then declares there is no answer. And this, Krishna says, Vita, you have to give it up. Then he goes on to say, Manmaya mamu pashita bahuvo jnana tapasa. By getting knowledge about me properly, many people have overcome these three stumbling blocks and they've come to the perfection of life. Well, thank you for showing it. There it is in 410 itself, proof positive that it exists. 410. Then we have Sringara Ras said, would you kindly elaborate on the proper mood of service? Means service for service. I'm serving Krishna. I'm serving my spiritual master simply out of a mood of service that it's out of love and appreciation. And when we have this kind of impetus, there are different motivations. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says the lowest of all is fear. Above fear is prospect. What am I going to get from this? Above that is duty, which is in the mode of goodness, because I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. And the highest motivation is love. It's out of gratitude that I'm serving. And these are the gradations of motivation. So the highest is mentioned, Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmanyavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktirutama. That my service is not motivated by anything except for a sense that Krishna is my Lord, and I'm grateful, and out of love I serve him. Alex and Valentina say, we were listening class from 2008, and so you have an example about billions living entities around the world who are just making different sound vibrations, and all about eating and meeting. Only devotees are chanting Harinam, and that's extremely rare. Yes, so there are birds in Australia called the kookaburra. The kookaburra makes all kinds of loud sounds. I'll see if I can play one for you. Can you enable me, please, to share? And I'll share with you the sound of the kookaburra.
It should work now, right?
Just now only. Kookaburra.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
So that's not exactly Hare Krishna. And there are, if you can imagine 1,000 or 10,000 kookaburras together at one time, which happens in Australia, then you can imagine the noise that would cause. And if you think of all the living entities all over the world making such noises, it's all mostly mating sounds. That here I am, look at my feathers. And if you notice human beings who have the same mentality as a bird, they walk on Venice Beach and they show off their feathers, and they're just trying to attract some other, a female attract a male, male attract a female, and they make noises and they sing songs and they get paid millions of dollars for them. I love you, and these are all mundane sounds from the material world. But when we transform our sound vibration to the holy name, and then our life becomes transformed. All that just to illustrate Alex's point. Anyway, now you know what a kookaburra sounds like. Okay.
Maharaj, I was thinking about what you said in the very beginning about mind, intelligence, and the subtle ego. And I was thinking that even though the intelligence is able to discriminate and the subtle ego is attached to the wrong things, this huge luggage of the mind that we lug along every time we switch from body to body is such a pain to carry. And if we don't get the clarity of who we are and what we are, and we don't clean up our mind, our suitcase very well, we're going to have a really difficult time switching from place to place. I was just thinking, such a heavy thing to carry, this mind full of thoughts and confusions and ideas. And like a computer, it keeps regenerating all these.
Yeah. And it's not that we can clean it either, but we depend on Krishna. Cheto darpanam marjanam bhava mahadav agni nirvapanam. The sense is there that it's a forest fire, it's a very dire situation, and unless the rain comes, it can't be cured. So this pravishtarandranam swanam bhavam saroruham dunoti salilam Krishna salilasa yatasharat. What's the first word of the verse? I missed it.
Pravishta karna ranre.
Pravishta karna ranrena. So that pravishta means to enter into something. Pravishta karna means the ear. Randrena means that it goes from the ear into the heart. Aswanam bhavam saroruham. There is our relationship with Krishna. And that becomes reestablished by hearing the sound vibration of the Bhagavatam. Salilam dunoti salilam. Dunoti means the remover, someone who takes it away. Krishna helps us, as we know from Shrimvatam Swakata Krishna, that he helps us to remove all those anartas, all those impressions. Dunoti salilam. And the example is given, salilam Krishna, just like during the autumn season, there's some rain that comes and it cleans all the streams and ponds everywhere. So if you try to clean the bodies of water, let's just say you have some ponds and rivers around your house. What's one way you could do it? We could ask Priya Kishori, she probably knows the scientific way, but it's alum. Alum is a chemical that you can put in water, and it coagulates all the particulate matter, and then it falls to the bottom. And then the little glass of water or maybe a small tank becomes clear. But if you tried to clear all the tanks and all the rivers with alum, you would fall short. However, during the autumn season, when the rain comes, it cleans all of them. I wondered about that because I thought, doesn't it get muddier when the rain comes? And Prabhupada actually explains this. He says during certain rainy times, the water gets muddy, but during the autumnal rains, that particular rain, the degree to which it comes, it actually cleans it. It makes everything clear. So the Bhagavatam in hearing is like that. It can clear all of our misgivings all at one time. And actually, the analogy given is that it can do it for all the people all over the world. And it's just like that cure-all. So the process of Ashtanga yoga means step by step to extricate oneself from the mind, take a staircase so that you can get free from identification with the mind and so forth. However, we take shelter of the process of pouring in the what is called these counter impressions. There's a way in which the program of hearing about Krishna rewrites those other impressions. It overwrites them so that we actually are left with a pure mind that can think of Krishna. There's a couple more to finish here. We have, good, I like this system. You're marking them off as we go, so we know where we are. Dhanavari said, I have a question. Doesn't this human body precious, even though isn't it precious even though it's material? We can only do bhakti in the human body. Is it right understanding? Yes. This is mentioned, labvam sadurlama bidam bahusambhavante manusham artadam anityam apihadira. So Bhagavatam says that, actually this is the Avaduta Brahmana says in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's very rare to get a human body, labvam sudurlama bidam bahusambhavante, and you get it only after millions of other species. You may have been a kookaburra before and many other different forms of life, but now you won the lottery of the species and you became a human being. So it's a gift, a great gift. And he says it's anityam, it's very temporary, but it's artadam, it's full of value. So if someone gives you something that is going to like gives you an ice cube, it's going to melt in a couple hours, but you're able to sell that ice cube somehow. You tell somebody, this is a rare ice cube, the Pope looked at it or something like that, and then you're able to sell it for $1 million and make $1 million before it melts. Then you're a really smart businessman. So same thing, you have this body, it's melting the day that you're born. It's like you're carrying an ice cube. It's running out now. But if you're able to take this and turn it into eternal life, he said, you're the smartest person on the earth. So it's extremely valuable. And in the section where Kamsa is about to kill Devaki, it's mentioned there that Vasudeva went to great lengths to save her body. And the Shastra there says that it's the duty of every human being to preserve their body as long as possible, because it's our vehicle for taking us back to Godhead. So you have to take care of it as meticulously as possible. Pavitra Renu says that should ISV Library website be used only for questions based on the lectures we hear from such and such? Can we also use it for questions we get from our own independent reading of scriptures? I don't understand the question. Questions based on lectures we hear. Well, the library is to capture lectures from everybody that speaks in the realm of ISV. So, for instance, let's say that we get a class from Priya Kishori. She gives a class, we'll record it, we'll transcribe it. It'll be if you go in the ISV library and you go in the section that says Priya Kishori, there will be her lectures. And then you'll be able to look up and see what she said. And there will be a Radhika Raman section. There'll be a Hanumat Prashek Swami section. The library will be full. It's based on the idea that whatever is spoken should be not only broadcast, but preserved so we can see a record of it. I hope that helps.
The question is, if they have question that comes up and they're independently reading, is there a way for them to ask those questions that you will answer?
Well, they could ask it here. Or you mean send it in separate of the class or something like that?
No, if I'm reading Bhagavatam Canto 3 and I have some questions, she's, I think, asking for a way to submit them to you.
Okay. Well, one way is to join the class and ask them, because that way, right now, they definitely get recorded. And another way, I mean, it's something we've been talking about for a while, how to capture those. So we'll take that into consideration. I know all the questions I get, I save and I put on Evernote the questions and the answers so they can be combined into categories and dealt with later. But we're in the process of refining it, and we'll take that under advisement. Thank you, Radha Venkat Prabhu, for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Yes?
Maharaj, when I got introduced to ISKCON, first time I heard when people are praying, they mention, "Oh Krishna, if you so desire." That was very unique and distinct, which I experienced, elsewhere, because here we are heavily relying that it's Krishna's will, whatever happens, even if we are asking whatever benediction in our head, is there. But, in a certain level, at some time, especially in the recent 3 weeks, because of, Bhakti Charu Maharaj's health situation, we see there is a yagya going on, there is a chanting going on all over. And it is very difficult to process, even we say that, oh Krishna, if you so desire, we need his association. And I'm just trying to, pacify my head in that way that, hey, maybe Krishna didn't hear my prayer because I'm not pure, and, because my prayer was not pure in that sense. But then there are many millions, hundreds of thousands of other devotees also praying for the same thing. So is this a sign of sometimes a helplessness situation which, emerge in our head, is just lack of understanding, or that we do not have enough faith in Krishna's what he does? Because at certain way in our head there is some reciprocation which we seek, and when we don't get, we get little disappointed. So I just thought to get your view, because this is, I know, very emotional, very recent, and it's, a little overwhelming to digest. So I thought to get your special guidance on that part.
Well, one point is that in relationship with Krishna and the Vaishnavas, as I mentioned before, the ways in which we pray to Krishna and we pray for Vaishnavas helps to bring us closer to the Vaishnavas through appreciating them and remembering how dear they are to us and how important they are to us. And in that sense, it's for our own purification. To take stock of our association and say, oh, I really am dependent on the Vaishnavas. I may think myself independent, but without the guidance and the example of great devotees, then how will I advance in Krishna consciousness? And how will the Krishna consciousness movement go on? And so forth. So, saying prayers, as with anything, for instance, when Prabhupada mentions that the Goswamis wrote books, he says their primary concern was their own purification. They weren't thinking, I'll become a great author, or this will become a bestseller and I'll make a living off it, or something like that. They're only thinking, how am I purifying myself by this activity? So in one way, when we're making prayers to Krishna and we're asking for something, it's reminding us of our relationship with him. As prayers means relationship, and it's very deep. Throughout the Bhagavatam, Radhikar Prabhu has mentioned this point several times. He said when he was a kid and he was hearing Bhagavatam, the story's going along, and he's thinking, oh, this is great, the story, and then all of a sudden the prayers start. He's saying, oh, not again, We got 20 pages of these very intricate prayers. It kind of, the narrative stops and the prayers get very philosophical and so forth. And he says, but actually it shows the relationship between Krishna and his devotee, and what they're feeling in their heart towards Krishna is very important. So, for instance, when we give an offering on Vyasa Puja or on the Tirobhava of our guru, like devotees of who are disciples of Prabhupada and others, all of us have that connection with Prabhupada either through Diksha or through following the Acharya through Shiksha, then, on the Tirubhav, we offer prayers, and Prabhupada once said, it's a kind of a test of the disciple, of the follower, to see what's in their heart. What is in his or her heart? Can you speak something, on that day? What comes out of your heart? Because the deeper you're practicing devotional service, then that will be forthcoming. It will be coming out of your heart in a very profound way, because you have realizations through your service to such to your guru. And when we pray, then also we're expressing what's in our heart, partly for our own purification, to see what's in there. Like, how am I actually feeling? Let me express it. And we say, my dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire. And of course, we put it that way because we don't want to be presumptuous and tell Krishna what to do either. Krishna is Satya Sankalpa. We accept whatever he says. And even if we don't, it comes to pass anyway. He has his own way of doing things and thinking, but he does consider, what the Vaishnavas think. But we should, as we're performing our devotional service and our prayers, be considering first and foremost how it's purifying to us and what's already in our heart. In another way, when a Vaishnav comes or goes, practically it's the same thing in a way, because, as we say, Vaishnavas are always living in sound, and it's a fallacy to say that they're gone, because they live in their instructions and their examples and so forth. And we come closer to them by these emotions, by feeling separation from them and expressing in words to Krishna that if you so desire, please keep him here for our own benefit. I would say none of this ever goes in vain. And just because we can't see Krishna's purpose immediately, Krishna is Satya Sankalpa, and also whenever he does something, he fulfills many purposes, multi-purposes, unlimited purposes at the same time. And just because I can't see what it is immediately doesn't mean that he hasn't fulfilled my prayer. It will come in a way that I'll later on say, oh, now I understand exactly how he fulfilled the spirit of my prayer. But my perception of reality is so limited that I can't see all that Krishna is doing all at the same time. So we also shouldn't think, oh, Krishna didn't hear us or he doesn't care or anything. Gajendra says he cares. He cares about every living entity, and he acts in such a way that he can simultaneously benefit everybody all at the same time in exactly the way that they need. And that's what he does. Saparya gachru kram akayam avranam masnaviram shudam apapa vidam kavir manishi paribu swayambura yatatyat yatortan vyardashasvatibhya samabhyaha. He's not encumbered by any kind of material fault. He has a completely transcendental spiritual body. His senses are perfect. He understands all situations at all times perfectly. And he's also fulfilling the desire of every living entity accordingly at every second. So if one's praying, it's for our own purification and to develop our relationship with Krishna and with the Vaishnavas. And also, Krishna will fulfill the spirit of that prayer in his own way, which is a perfect way. It may not be our way, because what do we know how things should be done? I have no idea how they're going on and what Krishna's purpose is. I hope that helps. Hare Krishna. Vancha Gopalvrishcha Kripasinabhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nantakoti Vaishnaviniki Jai Gaur Premanande. Can everyone please unmute and say Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Hari Hari Bo. Hari Bo.
Hari Bol.
Krishna.
Armarman. Natari Armarman. Natari Armarman. Natari Armarman. Hey, Natari Armarman. Natari Armarman. Natari Armarman. Natari Armarman.